Hey guys, I am down on the allotment and it is finally time to get some of my Ranunculus and my Anemones into the ground. Let's get these started. For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Peggy and I am growing a cut flower garden here on my allotment in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan, which is just south of Tokyo in USDA Zone 9B. Thanks for checking out my channel. Okay, so I am going to be starting my Ranunculus today. Now, I have grown Ranunculus in the past and I really like it. When I tried to dig it up from my old allotment to move to this allotment, I was absolutely devastated that I only found 6 corm. I could not find any. I'm not sure if they just rotted away, if they'd been eaten, don't know, but I only managed to find 6. So I had to go out and buy some new ones. So the first one I found was just kind of a generic mix of all these colours. But then I did manage to find some nicer ones. I got these nice purple ones, which are a nice, really deep purple colour. I got some plain white ones because they go with everything in the spring. I got some orange. These aren't like traffic cone orange though, they're kind of like a nice autumnal orange, which is a bit strange I guess because they're for spring. But these are the ones that I managed to find. So these are what I'm going to get started today. Now, if you watch in my last videos about growing Ranunculus last year, I started these by pre-soaking them and then pre-sprouting them. And that means you soak them in water to get them nice and juicy, and then you put them in a shallow tray and cover them just a little bit. Put them into a shady place with good ventilation and wait for them to sprout. And the idea behind that is that they sprout faster. You know that you're getting viable plants in the ground so they don't take up space and then not do anything in your garden. Which, if you're growing these on a commercial scale or if you're a small flower farmer, that makes sense. But for me, I'm just growing these in my garden, and my problem was that the reason I have a allotment garden is because my garden at home is so bad. On top of that, I don't have any outdoor space for storing things, if you like. So a lot of people will start their pre-sprouting and put them into a garage or a basement somewhere that has good air circulation, is dark and is cold, and I just don't have that. So when I did that to my corms last year, I ended up losing so many of them to mould, and it was mostly an air circulation problem. I had put them in an outdoor shed that I had, but it was a tiny little shed, and the temperature here, I'm in zone 9B, you can see it's a glorious sunny day today. It was still quite warm, and I just don't think there was the right amount of air circulation in there. So I'd bought all these beautiful new corms that were big and juicy and looked great, and I lost nearly all of them to mould. It was gross and it was very upsetting. So this year I've decided I don't really need to do that. I'm not starting them off in cold soil. I'm not looking for a 100% germination rate. So what I'm going to do this year is just soak them and then get them straight into the ground. So these are some nice salmon coloured Ranunculus that I've been looking for a really long time and I've not been able to find, but I've managed to find some online this year. And so I got these, and this is what a Ranunculus corm looks like when it comes to you. It's kind of like a weird little octopus or a dried out claw. Now, although I'm not going to be pre-sprouting these, I am going to pre-soak them, and that means I'm literally just going to put them in water until they get fix that. I am going to be pre-soaking these, which means I'm just going to put them in water and wait for them to get nice and juicy and plump before I put them into the ground, to make sure that these get the best start they possibly can. And that is the same for my anemone. Now, again, I didn't find very many of my anemone corms. I did have a lot of mystery bulbs though, which may or may not have been anemone bulbs. But I've got some new ones this year. So these are just the singles. These are the slightly more fluffy doubles. And then these are some nice white ones, which I'd grown in the garden before and I really liked these. They're kind of the white ones with the green centres. I thought they were pretty. So I'm going to do these. But again, you can't really see through the bags. These come and they almost look like little dried up stones. They're hard and solid and dried up. So these need to be pre-soaked as well. Now again, some people pre-sprout these, and again, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to pre-sprout them. I'm going to pre-soak them and then get them into the ground. As I mentioned though, I did have some mystery bulbs. I wasn't sure, things got mixed up, I didn't know what was what. And it seems that here in my freesia, which are looking great, I do actually have some anemone already coming through. This is what an anemone look like. And these ones are already coming through. Now obviously these were not pre-soaked because I didn't know that's what they were, but they're starting to grow anyway, so I am going to have some anemone mixed in with my freesia. Okay, so pre-soaking your bulbs really couldn't be any easier. I've got a bucket, I'm filling it with water. Now these Ranunculus that I got online didn't come in a nice little bag, so they're just going to go straight in as they are. In they go. Which isn't really a problem, except that the 6 that I dug up from my garden obviously also are not in bags, so they're just going to get mixed up a bit. But handily, all of the other ones come in these little mesh bags, which are waterproof. So it's really easy to just hook these on the side of the bucket, and then you know exactly which ones are which, and when you're planting them you can still keep them in the colour combos that you want. But they can just soak like that. And the anemone are the same. They're in these little mesh bags, so I can just hang them on the side. Make sure they're all in the water and getting a nice soak. I'm going to leave these here for about an hour to 2 hours, depending on how quickly they plump up. You don't want to leave them in too long because they will get too plump and then they'll just fall apart in your hands. The little octopus legs are really easy to break off and they just turn to mush, and that's going to be too much. So you're trying to hydrate them, but you don't want to over hydrate them. Now some people put a little fish tank bubbler in with this to try and keep the water going, because the air in the water, because you don't want to be drowning these. Another option is to just leave the tap running a tiny little bit, which I've never done because I always feel like it's a waste of water. So usually I would sit them here, and then maybe every hour I would just come and change out the water and put fresh water in. But now that I'm on this allotment, if I can get this hose to sit properly, I might leave the hose running just a little bit, and that's because this hose is directly attached to a well. So as this overflows, it's just going to go straight back into the well, basically, so I don't feel like I'm wasting water that much. So I'm going to leave this just a trickle on to keep the air going into the water and the water turning over. But I will come back and check these in about an hour and see how much they plumped up and see if I need to leave them longer than that. Okay, so my Ranunculus and Anemone have now been in this bucket for about an hour and a half. And you can see, oh, I've just got water run right down my arm. You can see how nice and big and plump they are now. So I don't want to leave them in much longer than that because they'll start to get too soft and they'll start to break. But these are nice and hydrated and ready. Okay, so this is the end of my spring bulb section. If you remember, I have some crimson clover, some sweet pea, my mystery bulbs. I've got hyacinth and grape hyacinth from Scotland. I've got my daffodil, I've got my freesia, and as I showed you before, there is a few anemone in with my freesia as well. So that leaves me this part. It's about half the row left that I'm going to put these in, and I'm going to start with my Ranunculus going in. Now my Ranunculus in the past have never got massive. I know they can get bigger than I get them, and I'm hoping to try and grow them better this year. I will be putting later in the season some frost cloth and a low tunnel on them to see if that helps, but for now I'm just going to put them in the ground and see how they get going to start with. But because they've never grown massive, I don't feel like I need to leave a huge amount of space in between each one. So this is a packet of 8 bulbs. These are my mixed ones, and I'm just going to put the 8 of them in a row together. Most of the other ones come in 4s, 4 corms per bag. So again, rows of 8 just makes things nice and simple. I can keep everything grouped together. So that's how I'm going to go ahead and do these. They don't need anything special. A lot of people are a bit confused by the shape, so when you're planting them you want the legs facing down, and they kind of have the bit where all the legs attach to, that's the top of the plant, that's where you're going to get your stems coming out of. So you want to plant it facing down like this into the ground. And again, same as always, about the same depth as the bulb is deep. So I'm going to be planting them about 5 centimeters deep. Let's get started. So you can see sometimes corms can be completely different sizes. Excuse my muddy hands. So this is from the same bag, one big one and one significantly smaller one. You're always going to get that when you buy a mix. This one actually looks like I could pull apart and get a new one off it. It's almost like 2 joined at the top. But this is how corms multiply, is they kind of grow side ones like this. So if you're buying in bulk from wholesale, if you're going to be growing these as part of a flower farming enterprise, they do come graded. You can get from A to D, I think, and that's telling you the size of the corm. Technically, the bigger corm, the bigger the flower, the bigger the plant, the more flowers you're going to get. But I mean, we'll get flowers off of both of them, so it's fine. But if you can find bigger corms, you want bigger corms. So that's all of my new ones in the ground. The only ones I have left are these ones that I got off the internet. And having said when I opened the pack that they were all quite small, they've actually plumped up really nicely. So I'm pretty happy with these. And these are the colour I've been after for a long time. Quite often the ranunculus are in the really basic colours here that I can get. It's kind of the bright pinks, the bright orange, the bright reds, the bright yellows. So I'm really happy that I finally got some of these salmon ones. They have, however, now been mixed in with my 5 from last year in the last year's garden. So let's get these in the ground, and I guess we have to wait for them to flower to see which ones are which. Okay, so with all of my ranunculus in, now it's time to do my anemone, and they are exactly the same. This is what an anemone bulb looks like. They're kind of weird shaped little nuts. They look softer now that I have soaked them a little bit, but you can see there's kind of a pointy bit, and then on top they tend to have a slightly flat top or a round bit. It's not always obvious which way is up, but you want to be pointy down. Here's another one. Kind of looks a bit like a walnut. So pointy side down into the ground. Now honestly, if you don't get them all the right way, it's not a huge big deal. They do self-correct. Some of these are really, really tiny. Like this one looks almost like a tooth. They will self-correct and grow up, but to give them the best start possible, you want to try and get them pointy side down, flat bit on top. And again, these are really small bulbs, so you don't need to be putting them in very deep at all. These are really hard to see once you put them in the soil. They're very easy to lose. There are 20 in this bag, so I'm putting them in rows of 10. And that is all of my ranunculus and my anemone in. But luckily, I still have a little bit of space here, which I'm really happy about. Now, 2 weeks ago, I planted in some viola here, and this was going to be my experiment for this year. I want to grow these close together and under shade cloth and see if I can get nice long-stemmed viola. But the packet that I had didn't have very many seeds in. I was really disappointed, and I ended up only getting 1 row. And honestly, from what I'm seeing now, I'm not sure how many of those have germinated. Yeah, it's not looking great. But I did go out and buy myself a couple more packets of viola and pansy. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in right at the front here in this extra space, just to try and get as many of those close together to see if I can get them growing nice and tall. So these ones are all actually pansies. The last one I put in a viola. These are the same ones. And then I have a slightly different, kind of bigger faced, brighter mix, which aren't as frilly. These ones again are slightly frilly. The viola I put in before are very frilly, and then these are kind of the bigger plain faced ones. So a bit of a mix, but let's see if we can get these growing. My last row was here, and I really don't know what's pansy and what's weed. It's that awkward stage of trying to guess. But I want these really close together, so I'm going to put in a row here, and a row here, and a row here. Okay, so that is all in. I'm going to give everything a really good water, and hopefully come spring this will be gorgeous. We'll have pansies, viola, anemone, ranunculus, freesia, hyacinth, daffodils, grape hyacinth, sweet pea, crimson clover, and then my mystery bulbs, whatever they turn out to be. I'm feeling really good about it. The weather is good, so we've had a nice amount of sunshine, cold and rain, so it's really helping things germinate. All the stuff that I had in, with the exception of my viola, from the last 2 weeks is already coming up. I've got fennel, I've got my bronze fennel, my dill are starting to look really good, my crimson clover is all up, all of my bulbs have started to come up. You can see just here beside me, my achillea has started to green out again. My rudbeckia isn't doing much now. I have reseeded that as well, but I mean that's a summer flower, so I shouldn't be getting that right now anyway. But the garden is looking pretty good. The only problem is these two patches of kind of weedy bits, and again that is because I've put seed down there and I'm not entirely sure what it looks like, so I'm a bit nervous about ripping up what I think is a weed to only find out that I've actually just pulled up all my flowers. So I'm going to leave that a little bit longer and see if they can become a little bit more recognizable before I start weeding in there. I'm about to get very wet. So that is all from me. If you want to follow along, please remember to hit the subscribe button below. If you want to see what I do with my cut flowers, that's so wet. If you want to see what I do with my cut flowers, you can check out my Instagram channel, which is From the Witch's Garden, and there's a link to that below. And I will see you guys next week. Bye!